Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'ina lahum bi ihsan ila yawmiddin wa alayna ma'ahum wa fihim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. To proceed, this is our 65th lesson in the Ship of Salvation, Safinatun Najat. We have reached section 29b, and these are scenarios of following an imam, and then after that we'll do, inshallah, traveling prayers. So the translation reads, there are 9 scenarios in following the imam. So these are scenarios with respect to following the imam as pertain to the sex of the one leading and the one following. He says they are valid in 5 instances. 5 of these scenarios constitute a valid congregational prayer. 1, a man following a man. 2, a woman following a man. 3, a hermaphrodite following a man. 4, a woman following a hermaphrodite. 5, a woman following a woman. So as pertains to the sex of the leader and the follower in a prayer, the imam and the follower, the congregation is valid in these 5 cases. And the congregation is invalid in 4 instances. A man following a woman, a man following hermaphrodite, a hermaphrodite following a woman, and a hermaphrodite following a hermaphrodite. So that basically is an additional condition that, along with the previous conditions of following the imam, and that relates to the sex of the one leading and the one following. And in those 5 scenarios, it is valid. 4 scenarios, it is invalid. That concludes the sections on the congregation, and that brings us to traveling prayers, one of the dispensations, alhamdulillah, that the beautiful sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam has brought. And Allah loves that His dispensations be taken just as He loves that strictness is taken. So joining prayers is a dispensation. The author here in section 38 says, there are 4 conditions for joining Asr with Dhuhr or Isha with Maghrib. And this is called Jama' at-Taqdeem, which means to combine 2 prayers in the earlier time, the time of the earlier of the 2, right? So combining in the earlier time means that you prayed Asr in Dhuhr's time or Isha in Maghrib's time. And we don't do any combining with the dawn prayer. So these are conditions for doing so. And this may occur due to travel, and the conditions for the type of journey upon which or in which joining may occur will be covered in an upcoming lesson. We'll cover the conditions of shortening prayers on a trip. And the trip that allows joining prayers on the relied upon position is the same trip that allows you to shorten prayers, though you might combine prayers with or without also shortening them. And another case where you might another case where you might join prayers is for rain, and that will only be in the earlier time. So that's what we will cover here. The conditions for combining prayers, whether that be due to travel or due to rain in the earlier time. The first of these 4 conditions, to begin with the first of the 2 prayers. So one has to, when combining in Dhuhr's time, begin with the Dhuhr prayer. When combining in Maghrib's time, begin with the Maghrib prayer. So al-bada'a bil-ula, right? La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. 2, that the intention to join occur in the first of the 2 prayers. So if we are going, for example, to combine Asr with Dhuhr in Dhuhr's time, that intention must be in our heart during Dhuhr prayer, even if just with the salam at the end, right? But prior to exiting the prayer, we have to have the intention to combine Asr with that prayer. And this is, again, if we're joining Dhuhr with Asr. Ideally, we make this intention with the intention for the prayer itself during the opening Allahu Akbar. But if it occurs any time prior to exiting the prayer, it is valid. So the intention to join must occur in the first of the two prayers. So if someone were to exit the prayer with salams, and then someone from their traveling party, for example, asked them, oh, would you like to join? And they hadn't intended during the first prayer, at that point, they may no longer join. That is invalid. So one has to intend during the first of the two prayers. 3, he says continuation between the two prayers. I tend to translate this as continuity. And what it means is that there not be a gap, that one prayer occur immediately after the previous prayer. That's what this condition means. There cannot be a gap between the first prayer and the second prayer when combining in the earlier of the two times. Now, obviously, there has to be at least a small gap. It takes a while to stand up, it takes a while to call the Iqamah, and so on. So there cannot be a gap as long as it takes to pray 2 rakahs in the shortest possible way that it is normally performed. So let's say, for example, it takes me, Abdul Karim, 2 minutes to pray 2 rakahs. If I pray the 2 rakahs as briefly as they would normally be performed, then I cannot have a gap 2 minutes or longer between the two prayers. I have to stand up from the first prayer and begin the second prayer within that time, before I have had a gap long enough to pray 2 rakahs. And again, those are 2 rakahs in the shortest possible way that they are typically performed. La ilaha illallah. And the same for Maghrib. If I'm going to do Dhuhr and Asr together in Dhuhr's time, I pray Dhuhr, stand up immediately, pray Asr. I can allow a little bit, maybe we're in a big congregation, we step to the back ranks, so we're connected, we're not distracting people, but I should be about my business and do it in less than the time it takes for 2 rakahs to pass. Same, let's say I'm praying Maghrib and Isha, same thing. I pray Maghrib, immediately stand up and pray Isha without a gap. And if I leave a gap long enough for 2 rakahs, I've lost my opportunity. I've broke this condition that is translated here as continuation. I tend to translate it as continuity, but it means they occur in immediate succession without a gap, right? There can't be a gap. The 4th condition, that the dispensation continues until the end of the prayers. La ilaha illallah. And actually, the dispensation that may be travel or maybe rain must last until you've done the opening Allahu Akbar of the second prayer, right? It has to last until the opening Allahu Akbar of the second prayer. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And that brings us to conditions for combining in the later of the 2 times. So section 30b reads, there are 2 conditions for delaying Dhuhr till Asr and Maghrib till Isha, which is called Jama' at-Ta'khir. So that means you could translate that as combining in the later of the 2 times. This section treats the conditions for combining 2 prayers in the later of the 2 times, which means we have prayed Dhuhr in Asr's time. We delayed Dhuhr until Asr's time, or we delayed Maghrib until Isha's time. And that we may do for travel, but we may not do for rain, right? And for rain, you may only travel with for rain, you may only combine with conditions in the earlier time. You may not combine for rain in the later time, and there are other conditions for combining for rain. As for travel, you may combine in the earlier of the two times or in the later of the two times. So these are two conditions for delaying the first prayer and praying it in the second prayer's time, delaying Dhuhr till Asr and Maghrib till Isha, Jam' Ta'khir, as this text reads. The first of these two conditions is intending to delay the prayer whilst time remains to encompass the first of the two prayers, right? So what is that saying? You can't just neglect a prayer and then say, okay, I'm delaying. You must intend during the first prayer's time, with enough time remaining to perform that prayer, you must intend, I'm delaying this prayer until the next prayer's time. And if you travel, for example, with people that have some knowledge of fiqh, knowledge of Islamic law, practical rules of the religion, they'll say, when Maghrib comes in, especially Maghrib, we're intending to delay everyone. So everyone intend delaying until the later time. So then they make that intention during Maghrib time, travel. When Isha time comes, then they pray Maghrib with Isha in the second of the times. But the point is they made the intention in the first of those times. And the second condition is that the dispensation continues until the end of the second of the two prayers, right? So how is that? Let's say that we intended delaying and my dispensation ended. Let's say I was playing traveling prayers on a boat and my boat came to dock and my dispensation was over while I was praying the second of the two prayers. Well, the second time is already in. So that prayer is still valid, but what it means is the first prayer counted as a makeup, right? If the second condition is not fulfilled, the prayer is valid because you're in the second prayer and its time is in. But what results is we determine retroactively that the first prayer was in fact a makeup prayer and was not performed in its proper time because you didn't have all other conditions for the delay, because your dispensation did not last until you completed both of the prayers. And Allah knows best. And there are, from Islamic scholars, those who have held the view that you could combine prayers for other reasons. And among them is the preferred position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi, the ikhtiyar of Al-Imam al-Nawawi. He holds the view that you can combine prayers if you have an illness, and that is an illness that is sufficient to sit down in prayer, right? If you have an illness that causes enough difficulty to be able to sit down in prayer, so praying them in separate times is as difficult as standing, and that you would thus be allowed to sit. And by praying twice, you incur that much difficulty. He holds the view that you can combine in either the earlier time or the later time. That is an ikhtiyar of Al-Imam al-Nawawi. It is not the relied upon position of the Shafi'i school. However, it is permissible to follow in one's personal practice. And alhamdulillah, who sent the magnanimous and relenting and easy Sharia of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.